Happy anniversary, sweetheart. I picked this out just for you. Will you wear it tonight?
Oh, it's gorgeous. I love it.
The face looks incredible. You've done an amazing job.
Thank you. We hope everyone enjoys it.
It smells fantastic. I know I made mistakes in the past, and I deeply apologize for the pain I caused you.
Em không biết phải nói gì hơn ngoài lời cảm ơn.
It's all right. We're just glad you are safe now.
Morning in the mountains began with a thin layer of mist covering the valley. Soft sunlight slipped through the trees, touching the small wooden house where Jack and Tien lived. A day that seemed ordinary, but for Jack, it meant everything. He stood quietly outside, looking into the distance. 1 year ago, their wedding day. Not a perfect memory, no flawless dress, no complete blessings, only chaos, misunderstandings, and tears. Jack clenched his hand slightly. His gaze deepened. This time, "I'll do it again," he whispered. Behind him, Tien stepped out, just like every other day. She knew nothing. The same gentle smile, the same peaceful eyes. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. Jack turned back, quickly hiding his emotions. "Nothing. Just a beautiful morning," he smiled. Tien looked at him. Something felt different. But she didn't ask. She stepped down and began her day, not knowing that today her life would be rewritten once more. After Tien left the house, Jack remained standing on the wooden porch. His eyes followed her figure as she disappeared down the small path. Then he turned back. The smile faded. Only memories remained. 1 year ago. The same day. But nothing like today's peace. It was a rushed wedding. Words left misunderstood, doubtful eyes everywhere, and tears he could never forget. Jack closed his eyes. The image of Tien that day appeared clearly. Not a joyful smile, but sad eyes, trying to stay strong. "I failed to protect you," he whispered. His voice sank. He walked inside the house. His gaze stopped at a small box in the corner. He opened it. Inside was an old wedding photo, folded, like an unfinished memory. Jack held it in his hands. His fingers trembled slightly. "This time, I'll give you a real wedding." His eyes slowly turned firm. No longer regret, but determination. Jack remained inside the small house, the old wedding photo still in his hands. His eyes lingered on it, then slowly folded it. Not to forget, but to close it. He stepped outside. The morning light had grown brighter. A gentle breeze passed through the distant fields. A different feeling began to rise within him. No more heaviness, no more regret, only one clear thought. Do it again, but my way. Jack looked around. The simple wooden house, the narrow dirt path, the distant mountains. No expensive flowers, no luxury venues, but something he never had before. Sincerity and peace. A small smile appeared on his face. An idea slowly took shape. A wedding, right here. No extravagance, no noise, just her and the people who truly care. Jack took a deep breath. His eyes lit up. This time, not to fix the past, but to give something truly meaningful. Jack walked quickly along the familiar dirt road. His eyes were no longer filled with hesitation, but with determination. He stopped in front of the village elder's house. A few villagers were gathered, chatting after work. "Hello, everyone," Jack spoke. All eyes turned to him. No more distance, only warmth. "What's going on, Jack?" someone asked. Jack hesitated slightly, then took a deep breath. "I want to recreate the wedding for Tien." The space fell silent for a few seconds. Then someone laughed softly. "You're serious?" Jack nodded, his eyes steady. "Last time, I didn't do it right." He looked down, then back up. but this time I want to do it with all my heart." No one spoke immediately, but their eyes changed. An older man stood up. "You don't have to do it alone." Others nodded. "The whole village will help." Jack froze, not from surprise, but from emotion. The atmosphere in the village elder's yard grew lively. A woman spoke first. "I'll take care of the decorations," another man followed. "I'll build the bamboo wedding arch. I'll prepare the tables and chairs. My family will cook for everyone." Voices overlapped. No hesitation, no calculation. Jack stood in the middle, almost unable to believe it. He hadn't even finished asking, yet everyone had already taken on roles, naturally, as if this was their own responsibility. Jack smiled softly, but his eyes turned red. "Thank you, everyone," he said quietly. An elderly man patted his shoulder. "No need to thank us. Here, your story is our story." A simple sentence, but it left Jack speechless. He looked around, simple people, but with hearts warmer than anywhere he had ever known. For the first time, he understood what family truly meant, not by blood, but by sincerity. While the whole village busily prepared, Tien knew nothing. She stayed behind the house, taking care of the vegetable garden like every day. Soft sunlight touched her hair. Everything felt peacefully ordinary. Jack stood at a distance, watching her. He didn't call out, just quietly observed. A small smile formed on his lips. "Just a little longer," he whispered to himself. On the other side, the villagers worked in silent understanding. No one revealed anything, no loud discussions, no suspicious glances. Everything was kept like a shared secret. A little girl ran past, almost saying something, but an adult gently pulled her back and shook their head. The girl giggled, then ran away. Jack saw that and chuckled softly. A warm feeling filled his chest. He never imagined that one day people would support him like this. He looked at Tien again. She was still watering the plants gently, unaware that a beautiful surprise was waiting for her. That afternoon, while Tien was in the garden, a village woman gently called out to her. "Tien, can you come here for a moment?" She looked a bit surprised. "What is it?" The woman smiled softly. "Just come, there's something for you." Tien followed her into a small house. The door opened. Soft light filled the room, and there, a white dress was hanging neatly. Simple. No luxury, no sparkling decorations, but pure and full of emotion. Tien froze. "What is this?" The woman looked at her warmly. "Someone wants you to wear it today." Tien fell silent. Her heart began to beat faster. A strange feeling grew inside her. "Jack," she whispered. The woman didn't answer. She only smiled. Tien stepped closer to the dress, gently touching it. Soft, but real. Just like her life now, something was about to happen. Tien stood still in front of the white dress. Her heart beat faster with every second, a feeling both familiar and new. The woman gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Try it on. Today is special." Tien didn't ask more. She understood. Even without knowing everything, she could feel it. She changed into the dress. It gently fit her body. Simple, yet it made her different. When she stepped out, people around her smiled softly. No one said anything, but their eyes revealed everything. She was led forward, step by step, slowly. The familiar dirt path felt different today. On both sides, villagers stood waiting, smiling, offering silent blessings. Tien began to realize. She covered her mouth. It can't be. Her eyes slowly filled with tears. Ahead, a simply decorated space appeared, and there, someone was waiting for her. Tien stopped, her eyes fixed forward, and then she saw him. Jack stood beneath a bamboo wedding arch. No elegant suit, no polished shoes, just simple clothes, but neat. The sunset light touched his face. highlighting the emotions in his eyes. He said nothing, just stood there, waiting for her, like a promise. Slowly, Tien walked toward him. Her heart beat loudly. Each step brought her closer to something once lost. Villagers stood on both sides. No one spoke, no music, no elaborate ceremony, only the wind and heartbeats. Jack looked at her. His eyes never moved away. When she finally stood in front of him, they both fell silent. But in that moment, everything had already been said. No one announced the start, no host, no elaborate rituals, but everyone knew the moment had come. Jack took a small step forward, standing closer to Tien. The distance between them almost disappeared. A gentle breeze passed by. Her white dress moved softly. The sunset covered them in warm, golden light. An elderly villager stepped forward, no paper in hand, no prepared speech, just looking at them and smiling. "You two have come a long way." His voice was slow. "Not an easy journey, but standing here today." He paused. "It's because you never let go of each other." Silence filled the space. Tien lowered her head. Tears fell softly. Jack tightened his hands. This time, it wasn't a wedding to prove anything, but a moment to affirm that they truly belonged to each other. Jack looked at Tien. This time, he didn't avoid her gaze. No hesitation, only sincerity. He took her hand, the hand he once let go of, now held tightly. "I didn't prepare any speech," Jack said. His voice was low but clear, "because I know the most meaningful words aren't written." Tien looked at him, tears still resting in her eyes. Jack continued, "1 year ago, I stood in front of you, but I wasn't strong enough to protect you." He paused. His eyes never left hers. "I let you go through everything alone." Silence filled the air. Only the soft wind remained. "But today, I'm not here to apologize anymore." His voice grew steadier. "I'm here to promise." Tien trembled slightly. Jack gently tightened his grip on her hand. "I promise. From now on, no matter what happens," he looked deeply into her eyes, "I will never let go of you again." After Jack's promise, the space fell silent. No one spoke, but everyone felt it. Tien stood still. Tears slowly fell down her face. No longer tears of pain, but release. She looked at Jack, her eyes trembling. "1 year ago," she began. Her voice was soft, but clear. "I thought we would never have this day." She gently tightened her grip on his hand. "I was so afraid." She paused, took a deep breath. "But I stayed." Jack looked at her, his eyes softened, not with sadness, but with gratitude. Tien smiled through her tears. "The past year wasn't easy, but everything we went through." She looked around. The villagers, the moment, the place, brought us here. She looked back at Jack. "And today, I'm not afraid anymore." A tear fell, but this time, it was happiness. As Tien finished speaking, the space fell silent for a brief moment. Then suddenly, applause broke out. At first, just a few people, but it quickly spread. The entire village joined in. The applause wasn't loud, but it was warm, sincere. Some people smiled, some wiped their tears. No one said anything grand, but everyone understood. This was more than just a wedding. It was a journey that had reached an end, and a new beginning. A child ran forward, smiling brightly. "Congratulations!" Everyone laughed softly. The atmosphere became lighter. Jack looked around. Familiar faces, people who had stood with them through difficult times. He bowed his head slightly, not out of formality, but gratitude. Tien stood beside him. For the first time, she truly felt the blessing, not from strangers, but from people who genuinely cared. After the applause, The atmosphere slowly softened. The sun began to set behind the distant mountains. The sunset painted everything in warm, golden light. Jack gently held Tu Tien's hand, saying nothing, just holding it tighter. They walked away from the small yard, toward the open field ahead. The villagers didn't follow. They stayed behind, smiling quietly, as if they understood. This moment belonged only to them. The evening breeze flowed gently. Her white dress moved with every step. Jack stopped, turned to look at her. His eyes softened. "Is it beautiful?" he asked. Tu Tien looked around, then back at him. She smiled. "It's not the view. It's this moment." Jack smiled softly. No more words were needed. They stood there, in the sunset, in a new life, quiet, but complete. Night slowly fell. The mountain sky filled with shining stars. Cool air drifted through the rooftops, carrying a peaceful feeling beyond words. Jack and Tu Tien returned to the yard. The villagers were still there. Some were lighting a fire. Others were preparing food. Not a grand feast, just simple dishes, but filled with laughter. Jack looked around, then at Tu Tien. "This is our real wedding," he said softly. Tu Tien smiled. No more tears. Only peace. She held his hand. "We don't need anything more," she replied. They sat down with everyone, eating together, laughing together, sharing old stories. No more heavy past, only a gentle present. Jack tilted his head slightly, looking at her. His eyes held no regret, only gratitude. A long journey had come to an end. Not with an ending, but with a new life. Simple, yet complete.
Hello mọi người, hôm nay mình sẽ trình bày câu chuyện về Toàn, một người đàn ông sống với những ký ức đã mất. Khi anh dần dần xây dựng cuộc sống của mình thông qua những công việc thường nhật giản dị và sự chăm sóc thầm lặng của những người xung quanh. Dưới ánh mắt theo dõi của một bà lão, Toàn đã bắt đầu thấy vững vàng trở lại. Dù câu hỏi về quá khứ vẫn tiếp tục làm anh trăn trở. Trung tâm của sự bối rối ấy là Tử Diễm, một cô gái trẻ tốt bụng và tận tâm. Người mà sự ấm áp, gần gũi của cô khơi gợi những tia sáng le lói của những ký ức bị lãng quên. Mặc dù anh không thể nhớ mình đã yêu cô ấy như thế nào, nhưng sự hiện diện của cô mang lại cho sự an ủi, hy vọng và khát khao lớn lao, muốn tìm lại cho con người mình trước đây. Qua công việc chung, những cuộc trò chuyện nhẹ nhàng, những khoảnh khắc bình dị tràn đầy ấm áp, Toàn nhận ra rằng sự chữa lành không phải là lúc nào cũng đến từ việc nhớ lại mọi thứ cùng một lúc, mà đến từ việc sống và yêu thương, tin tưởng những người luôn ở bên cạnh anh khi anh thấy lạc lõng nhất.